My guests today are Marianne Robb and Dave Rich, the investigative duo known as UAP-PD. Marianne and Dave are retired law enforcement officers with over 59 years combined of law enforcement experience. They have created UAP-PD to provide a safe place for officers and first responders to share their stories and speak about the stressors they've experienced during these investigations without fear of reprisal, the threat to their career, or the ridicule from inside their organization. Their website is UAP-UAP-PD.com. Marianne and Dave, welcome to the Bruce Collins Show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Now, I actually, how I found out about you was I just moved to Arizona last September. I stopped doing radio for 10 years. My mom had dementia. I took care of her, and I worked a 40-hour remote job, and she passed away last year. And I'm from Tucson, or I lived my teenage years in Tucson. So I moved back, and I saw you in the Epic Times, the Arizona version.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay, so now before we dive in too far, tell us what people can find at your website, uap-pd.com.
Well, they can find our mission statement that we have of what is UAP-PD. We have examples of old or other podcasts that we've done in the past, radio shows that we've done like Coast to Coast. It is on our website. It explains all about what the law enforcement officers kind of go through every day. And if they see something they can't explain, well, then they kind of are at a loss. Mm-hmm. And we kind of explain that in our website. We've got, it's got like 5 different categories. And it also talks about some of the lectures we have done. That'll be on the website.
But the most important thing that's on the website is there's a contact us button. And the best thing about that is if you are a first responder, and for us, first responders don't have to just be law enforcement. So we talk to law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, emergency room doctors, park rangers, corrections, and it can be federal, it could be local, it could be county, it could be whatever. If you are one of those people on the front line and you've had some sort of experience that you can't explain and you feel like you have nowhere to go to, you can click on our contact us. It gives a little section where you can just type in real quick, just please contact me. It doesn't even have to have details about it. We've got stuff as please call me about an issue, or as little information as needed, and we will get back to you usually within a day or two. We're pretty quick on the turnaround, and at least make that initial contact, kind of see how we can help, and then we go from there depending on what the nature of what they're asking is.
Yeah, and there's an excellent interview, as you said, with George Knapp at uap-pd.com. A lot of great stuff there. I hope people check it out tonight. And as we said, you also were both in law enforcement. How did the interest in UAP form? Was it at work or outside of work?
Well, I'll start that one. For me, I have never seen anything whatsoever. And sorry about the pup. I don't know if you can hear him.
That's okay.
I apologize.
I have a cat.
Okay. But no, I have never seen anything, whether on duty, off duty. I'm an avid fisherman, hunter, and I still have not seen anything. How we started this organization is I went to a MUFON meeting here in Phoenix, and MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network. I was at a meeting in Phoenix, and they were talking about disclosure. And they started talking about airline pilots and the military coming forward. And I'm like, after the meeting, I'm thinking, I didn't hear anything about law enforcement, didn't hear anything about first responders. So came home, was talking to a good friend of ours, Alejandro Rojas, which is with Open Minds and Enigma Labs. And we were talking about the meeting and the disclosure and everything like that. And I says, why aren't law enforcement officers talking? Well, we said, you know what? Let's give Dave a call. So I did. We were sitting out there and I called Dave and I told him about the meeting and I told him about, the disclosure, but why aren't law enforcement officers talking? And he stopped for a second. He goes, I'll tell you exactly why law enforcement officers are not talking about this kind of subject. And this is where he comes in.
So I get this phone call from Marianne and Alejandro, and they ask me, why aren't police officers talking? And I said, well, I can tell you exactly why. And I recounted what happened to me, because unlike Marianne, who has never had anything happen, I unfortunately did. Well, maybe it's fortunately now, actually. But at the time, it wasn't fortunate. But in 2017, I had an incident while I was working as a school resource officer where we had a 911 call come in from the front desk on a Saturday, and there was nobody there. Nobody on security footage at the phone. We got the recording. It is a voice that has a conversation with the dispatcher. And this is a real quick version of it, but I end up getting told by my supervisor that I have to do an investigation because at that time I was about as hardcore of a skeptic as you could find. Like, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that was more like closed minded about the idea of something like this happening in the world. And my sergeant at the time that I worked for was more open to the idea. So he just thought it was amazing to have somebody who was adamant, dig your heels in. I'm not going to believe in ghosts, UFOs, monsters, none of that stuff. And I'm going to make him do this investigation and see what he comes up with. So I go through this entire investigation. It took probably about 2 weeks altogether with everything. I had the 911 tape analyzed. I had the security footage from the school pulled. I ran down every possible lead. At that time, I had already been a patrol officer, a detective. I was a homicide detective. I was a sex crimes detective. I had a lot of experience in investigating things. At the end of this entire investigation, every time I was like, oh, well, this has to be the logical explanation, I would rule that out. Then I would move on to the next logical explanation, and then I would rule that out. At the end of all of these possible leads that I ran down, I was left scratching my head going, there is no explanation. There's nobody standing at that phone. I have it on video. At the time that that phone call comes in, there's nobody standing there. I have video of the patrol officers walking in and picking up the phone off the counter and having the conversation with the dispatcher.
Hmm.
I ran down every possible lead and was left scratching my head going, there's the only it's like the old adage, when you rule out everything possible, the only thing left, no matter how impossible it is, has to be the answer. And I was stuck with that. But I still couldn't really admit it. Like, I was still like kind of struggling with it. But I was at least moving to the point from going completely hardcore skeptic to, okay, maybe I can accept the fact that there are things in this world that I don't understand, and maybe the world is bigger than what I thought. But that's not really what got us started with UAP-PD. What really got us started is about 2 days after I had that realization, I get called upstairs with a separate sergeant, a different sergeant. It wasn't my direct sergeant; he was one of the detective sergeants. And I walk into his office, and he has two computers set up, two computer monitors. One of them has the security footage from the school on it, and the other one has like an MP3 player. And he plays the security footage. He plays the 911 tape, like I hadn't heard it before. And he looks at me and goes, "You expect me to believe this?" And I stopped, and I'm like looking at him like totally thrown. I was like, I don't know what you believe. I don't really care what you believe. This is what I found." And he basically accused me of lying, accused me of making up all of it, somehow getting the dispatcher, the people who analyzed the 911 tape, the people who took the security footage, the patrol officers who responded, the people from the phone group that came and checked to see if the lines were tapped, all of these different investigative tools that I went into. Somehow he was trying to claim that I got all of them involved in some big grand hoax.
Hmm.
For what reason, I have no idea. Now, keep in mind, at that time, I had been a police officer. I had like 6 years left in my career, but I had been decorated numerous times. I had meritorious conduct. I had distinguished service. I had the life-saving award, distinguished team citation. I had never in my life ever had a supervisor look at me and accuse me of lying or making this up. So when he's saying that, after I've done a full investigation, I'm not going to lie, I took it a little harsh, and there was quite a, we'll call it an animated conversation. And I stormed out of the office, and as I was storming out of the office, he basically told me I was not going to write up a report. I was not going to document this. I was not going to talk about it. And if I did, you know what'll happen. And I go storming out of the office, and I get halfway downstairs, and that was the moment that I realized that whether I like this guy or not, he was a supervisor and I was not. So I needed to keep my mouth shut. So I kept my mouth shut for 6 years and didn't talk about it, didn't do anything. But for some crazy reason that I can't figure out until now, I kept the security footage. I kept the 911 tape. I kept all of the stuff that I had found. And so I basically, when I get the phone call from Marianne and she's asking me, well, why are law enforcement not talking? And Alejandro kind of hinted at the idea that it was kind of like what the sergeant was saying. It was all part of some big conspiracy to cover up the truth. And I'm like, no, the reality is it isn't. The reality is that these officers, when they see stuff, are getting told to not talk about it. They're getting dragged through the ringers. They're being accused of making things up by their own supervisors and their own agencies. And so it created this kind of like almost sense of injustice, I think, maybe in me. And when I explained that all to Alejandro, he's like, well, you guys need to start talking about this because people should know the truth, know what's really happening. But more importantly, to me, the way that I took it is for 6 years, I sat there with that information. Some of the greatest, in my opinion, and what I've been told by other people, some of the greatest evidence that there could possibly be life after death ever. And I sat on it for 6 years because of my job. I was basically told if I don't do it, if I kept talking about it, I was going to be fired. So if it happened to me, it's got to be happening to other people. And so that's what we really decided to create this for. It's not really like a quest to find the truth. I guess it's kind of like a secondary thing. Our real motivation behind this is that there are first responders, men and women who have dedicated their lives to protecting others, doing the right thing, helping those in need, and they're being left out to dry with these type of scenarios. I mean, we've got all sorts of critical incident stress management for if they get into a shooting, they get into a car accident, they go to a hot call or a traumatic call that might involve like the death of somebody. They get all of these counselors that they get to talk to and all of these like resources that they can have to help them negotiate those traumas, but there's nothing in place to help them with this type of trauma, which whether, and one of the things I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, it's like at the end of the day, whether they saw a ghost, they saw a UFO, they saw a Bigfoot, or they saw nothing and maybe it was just a misidentification, your brain does not know the difference between whether it was really a UFO or UAP or it was just a satellite or it was a trick of the light. But that trauma that they are suffering is the same, whether it's really an unidentified flying object or it was like a drone or a satellite. And at the end of the day, these guys, these men and women have nobody to go talk to. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here is create that safe environment where they can start the healing process.
Mhm. So you just made an important distinction. Even though the name of your organization is UAP-PD, you're also investigating other things like the paranormal or cryptid sightings or any anomalies, right?
Yeah, and I can explain that because UAPPD normally stands for unidentified aerial phenomenon. For us, it's unidentified anomalous phenomenon.
Mm.
And it basically stems from the fact that, again, our subject matter are these first responders. At the end of the day, we don't care if they saw a UFO or Bigfoot. We just want to help them. And
Yeah.
so we've kind of almost had to become like jack of all trades, where like MUFON could focus solely on UFOs, and like the Bigfoot Research Organization could focus on Bigfoot, and you've got paranormal groups that only focus on ghosts. We've kind of been thrust into this position of, well, you need to know a little bit about this, you need to know a little bit about that. And I'll tell you this much, I think it's been interesting and fun as all get out because I'm learning all sorts of things I never even thought of learning before because I was so adamant that it wasn't real.
Mhm.
And I've kind of had to like turn over this new leaf and embrace this whole different side where, wow, there's a world out there that is way bigger than we are.
Yeah. Now, as you collect these stories, are you finding any geographic hotspots with law enforcement and first responders?
I'm going to say, I know
Uh,
we're in Arizona, but I got to say, Arizona is a hot spot.
Mhm.
We've got Sedona with the vortexes, and we've here where we live, we have the Superstition Mountains
Right.
just in our backyard. And there are a lot of interesting things, especially UFOs coming and lights in the sky coming from the Superstition Mountains. But yeah,
mission,
I'm sorry.
even the mission. Like
Yeah,
we've
that's
gotten
it.
like even smaller like
Yeah.
locations. There's like one particular location that's on one of the reservations here that's south of Phoenix that without even knowing it, we ended up getting 5 different stories from 5 different police officers about events that happened at this one location. And the thing that was interesting is a lot of times when you'll get like multiple events at one location, it's all kind of the same event. Like it's like a ghost. It's a ghost. Or you get multiple sightings of like a cryptid type creature in this area. But these stories, there's like one ghost, there's one demonic story, one ghost story, 2 or 3 cryptid stories, all at this one location. And so in somebody's infinite wisdom, we decided to go out there and check it out. And then while we were there, we ended up catching something as well on video and seeing something. So not only Arizona in general, but we're finding like little pockets where certain things happen. And I think a lot of it stems from just the nature of where you are. Like obviously, if you're in a heavily wooded area, you're going to see an uptick of more of the cryptid type sightings. If you're in more of a outskirts, like what we have here in Arizona, is we had a lot of UFO sightings because it's wide open desert, a lot of open sky, and the weather, if you think about it, at any time of the year, we're never like stuck inside at night because of the snow or anything like that. So you're just out in more opportunities. If you have more opportunities, there's more chances that you're going to see things.
Mhm. Were you both living in Arizona when the Phoenix Lights took place?
Yes, we were. However, I was fast asleep.
I wasn't a cop yet.
Oh, okay.
I was working day shift. So I was in bed 7:30 because I knew I had to be up at about 4 o'clock in the morning. So I never saw anything. I was fast asleep.
We have gotten 2 police officers and 2 firefighters
Yes.
that have come forward with what they saw on that night. And so
Hmm.
we got some nice information from them of what they saw.
Yeah. There was lot more. There were a lot more firefighters and police officers. They were doing a joint training in Phoenix that night. And even though there was probably about 20 folks that actually witnessed this flyover, we had only 2 guys that came forward, and they were 2 firefighters that came forward and talked about it. Nobody else would come and talk to us about it. That's how scared they are that they're going to get ridiculed. Their
Yeah.
job is in jeopardy.
And there was also the one thing that was kind of interesting is one of the firefighters, when he was telling us the story of what he saw, what they saw, I remember him saying that like he looked at the supervisors and stuff, and somebody in the group just said, "Oh, that's military stuff," and they all just kind of accepted that as the answer and just kind of walked away. So like they never really looked any further than that because as soon as they heard, "Oh, that's military stuff," oh yeah, okay, and they just kind of went about their way. But I think they're like with the Phoenix Lights in general, there were a number of stories of vehicles stopping on the 10, a major highway here in Arizona, and just watching them. And then when it passed over, they all just kind of like in a daze got back in their car and drove off. Like we have a very similar story in Omaha, Nebraska about a police officer that pulls up to a Walmart and there's a triangular craft flying above the Walmart. And he had about a dozen witnesses that were all just standing there staring at it. And the way that he described it is it was like they were all kind of like in like a daze. And when the craft just kind of rose up and flew off into the clouds and disappeared, everybody just kind of walked back to the car. No conversation, no communication between any of them. They just got into their cars and drove away. And he had to actually direct traffic to get everybody out of there. So it's kind of interesting. You get some of these sightings like that, and you have this weird phenomena where people are like seeing it and just kind of going on. So
Yeah. You know, it's a shame that most of these stories are relegated to late night radio.
uh,
Nothing against late night radio. I love it. I'm a big fan of Art Bell's work, but I think that makes a lot of people who are doubters see it as more of a skeptical look at it.
yeah.
The great thing about your organization is it's from 2 seasoned, retired police officers. Is there anything though within the police force, and I gathering the answer is no based on your comments, Dave, but um, are there any first responder sightings that have been cataloged anywhere that we can go back and look at?
Well,
They're actually have, but they're not really advertised, so to speak. Like you have Lumberton, which had a UFO sighting over a 4-day period,
mhm.
and there were
There was at
This is your
least,
big one. So.
yeah, there was about 37 officers, I
Wow.
believe 4 or 5 counties and several cities that this UFO was just going from one city to the other, and the officers were chasing it. They were talking to each other, and that's the case that the late Lee Spiegel got contacted by Dr. Hynek and says, "Hey, get out to Lumberton and find out what's going on." So yeah, that's J. Allen Hynek. There's a big write up on that one. Did they know what it was? No, but at least that was documented. That's one of the a big story. Now you go to St. Louis. They had one where one night there was probably 4 or 5 different officers chasing this UFO throughout the city. Well, that morning, after everything was said and done, they had a supervisor contact each one on the radio, says, "Get to the briefing room." They got all to the briefing room and they were told, "You will not write this up. You will shut up and not talk about it again."
Wow.
And I was speaking to an officer that was with St. Louis. He wasn't involved in it, but he says, "Hey, if you can find anybody or any documentation, go for it. Do that." But it sounds like they buried everything on that case. So there really isn't a lot of cases. It seems like looking at the older cases, a lot of them are the older cases, and a lot are from back east. It seems like back east accepts it more, these sightings, than on the West Coast. It seems like the West Coast is like, you know, as I've heard a friend of mine say, log it and dog it. Basically, log it maybe a little bit here and get rid of it. Nobody's going to talk about it again.
Yeah, I think the general consensus among officers is they see something, it's okay to talk about it with your friends in the locker room, but then that's where it's done. It doesn't go outside.
Mm-hmm.
Until we came along and now we started asking questions. And now we got people coming forward and going, well, we'll talk to you guys because you guys did the job. You guys understand what it's like to the uniqueness of being a first responder. It's a very interesting career. And we bring that to it. And fortunately, my interaction with the supervisor and what happened to me has been a great like icebreaker with these officers. When I tell them what happened to me, then they feel, okay, yeah, I can talk to you about this because you understand what it's like. You understand how we would be made fun of. You understand why we wouldn't be able to say this to other people. And then one of the things that we always do is we let them dictate how much information they want to give. So we have stories that we have almost 100 stories now. When we gather these stories, we take down all the information and we ask all the first responders, can we use this story on things like this, radio shows, podcasts, anything to kind of help further the cause? And everybody has been really, really gracious about it. We have some that are like, no, we can't talk about that because there's still maybe cold cases or active cases. And we have everything from across the board. We've got officers that are like, well, you can use my story, but don't use my name. Or you can use my first name, but not the name of my agency. All the way up to people like me who are like, I don't care. I'll tell you the agency. I'll tell you the what happened, when it happened, things like that. So but finding like actual police reports about it is few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. When you look at people who have experiences with UFOs, oftentimes they have multiple encounters. It's like these beings visit them over and over again. Is that true with police officers?
Well, I do have a case. He was a Department of Corrections officer, and he helped out with the federal side. He was state and federal, working both of them. He had about 5 different encounters. Started out with, he was checking out an area for training. And all of a sudden it got really cloudy. I mean, this is in Arizona. Again, blue sky. All of a sudden it got very cloudy. And out of the clouds came this silver disc. And it was probably a few hundred feet above him. And he looks up. It was there for about a minute or so. And then all of a sudden it took off. He goes, okay, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure not talking about it. Went about his business. Maybe 6, 8 months later, he's out with a 6 or 7 different inmates that were out in the yard area doing some work. All of a sudden, here it comes again. Looks up, gets cloudy. This time, the inmates also saw it. And they're like, officer, what was that? What was that? And he goes, just keep your mouth shut. Nothing was seen. You don't worry about it. He then, 3 other times after that, he had encounters. He had one where it was an actual entity that was inside the jail that he saw. And again, he wasn't talking about it. He was hunting with 2 of his friends out in the Picacho Peak area off of I-10. And at that point, they actually had an encounter where one of the guys went and actually he was kind of like in a, what do they call that? Not the sleep,
Like a trance?
Like a trance. He was almost like in a trance. And when my officer, he still doesn't want to be identified, even though he's retired. The officer goes up and says, hey, what's going on? He goes, well, what are you doing here? He goes, you've been gone for over an hour. He went to go pick up some ammo out of the car. As they were going back, there was a blue ball of light that was in a horse trough that was sitting there, a water trough. And as they picked up they had their guns with them, as they were just picking it up, just the slightest bit, that blue orb, it just took off. That blue light up into the sky, and it kind of almost turned into one of the stars. So between that, and then he actually had an encounter with an entity in his house. He was fast asleep.
Wow.
And he had that sleep paralysis. And he was able to open his eyes, but that's it. And here are 2 grays right there at his house, inside his bedroom. Said a prayer. All of a sudden, they were gone. And that was the last time he had. So he had over 5 or 6 encounters. One, that close encounter at his house. And after he said that prayer, he's never had another encounter. But he had to retire. He got some type of illness that no doctor could explain. There was no diagnose. He was just getting sicker and sicker. So he retired. And when I finally contacted him, he actually was crying on tape saying, thank you that finally somebody's listening to me. Thank you for coming and listening to my story. But even though he's been retired for 6 or 7 years, he still refused to tell us. He did not want to be identified because he's thinking if the public safety retirement or the federal retirement hears his story, that they'll take his retirement away. So he's still fearful of sharing his encounters. But again, he told us his stories.
We've had a couple of other stories, like multiple encounters by people as well. Our furthest story, the story that's furthest away that we found was a police constable in Australia, and she had multiple encounters as well. It started with a video that she sent us of a craft flying outside the window of her house, and it kind of caused her to rethink about different things. And she had recurring dreams of being almost like in an examination room with some entities. And so we have had a couple of things like that. I would say the majority of our cases are like pretty much one and done. Like an officer has or a firefighter has an experience, and then they tell us about that experience, and then that's pretty much it.
I've heard some weird stories over the years. One of them was a lady was on a UFO craft and she saw a Bigfoot, which makes no sense.
Wow.
And there was another girl, I think a group of girls that were playing with a Ouija board, and they saw a Bigfoot that materialized in their house. Could we be looking at the same thing when we're looking at all these different paranormal objects?
One of the things that we kind of have stumbled across here, because again, we're in that position where we're going for what the first responders had. So it's forced us to learn about Bigfoot. It's forced us to learn about different entities like that, ghosts, UFOs, stuff like that. One of the things that we're definitely not the first people to uncover it, but we've noticed this similarity that they are related. And you can look at different examples of that. Like, for example, David Paulides one of his books, and he had a movie about it, is a direct correlation of UFO sightings and disappearances at national parks and
Mhm.
Bigfoot sightings and stuff like that. So you have that link. Like they had, I used to watch it on the Travel Channel. It was called Terror in the Woods, which was all sorts of stories about Bigfoots and paranormal, ghosts, hauntings, things like that. So there's some sort of correlation there as well. And even if you look at things like ghosts and the paranormal and UFOs, you have a great example I just gave the other day when we were doing a talk down in Oracle, Arizona. If you say orbs to a paranormal researcher, they're going to talk about the orbs that they'll see inside a haunted building. That could be an entity flying around on the camera. If you say orbs to somebody from MUFON, they're going to talk about the lights flying in the sky that are craft.
Mhm.
So there is a correlation with all of them. And we're pretty much convinced that they're all related somehow. We don't understand how, but a lot of times it's just a matter of time. We don't understand how now. Who's to say what we could discover 50 years, 100 years down the
Right.
road? We may end up finding out that they're all interwoven and interconnected. We pretty much believe they got to be because of so many similarities and so many crossovers.
Mhm.
We just don't. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure it out. Just a cop, you know.
Well, so when you look at these things, in your estimation, are they ramping up? This is my final question for this week. Are they ramping up? And if so, does that concern you?
I don't know if they're necessarily ramping up as much as people are noticing them more. And in the noticing them more, let's face it, there's been a slight change in society where in certain areas it is becoming a little bit more accepted to believe in life on other planets because of the Drake equation, scientific principles that prove that it is more likely than not that there are life on other planets. I think as society starts to accept that more, people are getting a little bit more comfortable and coming forward and talking about it. So I don't know necessarily if there's more stuff or maybe they're just talking about it more. And as for being concerned about it, I don't know if I'm any more concerned or less concerned. I think there should always be a level of concern no matter what it is because anything has a potential to be good or bad.
Right.
Even the concepts of good and bad, there are varying degrees of it. Um, I think that the concern is more along the lines of being respectful of what you're dealing with, accept it, understand it, and then be smart about it. You don't want to go like, I mean, they and all the like sci-fi TV shows where there's aliens, they always talk about people stop shooting at the UFOs as they're flying over. Well, yeah, you should stop doing that. Why? Because they have the technology to travel through an expanse of space and you're shooting at them. That's not the smartest thing to do.
Mhm.
So I think that we have to be smart about it. So I'm not more concerned, but I'm not less concerned, if that makes any sense. And I'll let Marianne finish off this.
Oh, and for UAPPD, what we're finding out is we're getting a lot of stories, but a lot of our stories are from back 10, 15 years ago. So these things have been happening. There's just no place for them to talk about them. It's more like you said, it's more acceptable to talk about it. So they're like, oh, well, yeah, 10 years ago, I had this happen to me. So am I hearing more stories? Yes. Is it happening in 2020 and 22 or 25? I don't know. It seems like there, at least for us, there's a lot of older stories that folks just feel more comfortable coming forward now, but they're stories that happened when they were teenagers, um, or even when they were young kids, like in Australia. It
Mhm.
was when she was a child, 5 years old. She believed she was abducted, and she actually was being examined by the Nordics type, the aliens race, the Nordics. So it didn't happen now; it happened back then. But she feels more comfortable now being able to talk about it.
Mhm. I guess the thing that disturbs me the most about it is we're at the stage where we're finding out about them. We're collecting information. And this is true of all of us. Um, but I would have to believe they know everything about us. And
Yeah.
we'll leave it at that note this week. Again, we've been speaking with Marianne Robb and Dave Rich of UAP-PD. Their website is uap-pd.com. And Marianne and Dave, I will be happy to have you back next week to talk and dig in deeper to your research.
Sounds
good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's